This is a topic I've talked about on my channel before. In fact, I have actually talked about it a couple of times, 2 months ago and 5 months ago, and it is the subject of, is Michael Chandler wasting his time waiting for Conor McGregor to be coming back to the UFC? And it's a subject that is actually kind of appearing a little bit recently as well. MMA On Point has made a video about it 2 weeks ago. A channel called Hapiro MMA made a video on it 3 weeks ago. MMA Joey made a video on it about 3 weeks ago. So people are talking about this, and it is a little bit of a trending topic right now. And it does kind of seem to be that Michael Chandler isn't actually going to be Conor McGregor's next opponent. And it would be absolutely hilarious if that was true. Because if you look at this here, this guy called Will Hates MMA on Twitter recently put up, McGregor is a hero in my eyes for sacrificing the last of his career and destroying his physical well-being in order to waste Michael Chandler's time. I know it's kind of a funny tweet and a silly tweet, but it almost feels like that actually could be the case. And then Renato Moicano said that McGregor versus Chandler is reported for UFC 400, kind of inferring that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in years and years and years of time. Islam Makhachev kind of mocked Michael Chandler a little bit, saying every night he goes to bed and dreams about potentially fighting Conor McGregor, and says that Michael Chandler needs to face reality and potentially realize that that fight ain't happening, mate, against Conor McGregor, sorry. And I think there actually really is a real chance it doesn't happen. And then the MMA guru, of course, did have his take about the fight, saying that Dustin Poirier actually might be the next fight for Conor McGregor. Of course, they actually have quite a bit of history, and since Dustin Poirier is such a popular fighter, you could argue that he brought the most eyes to UFC 299, and then he beat Benoit Saint Denis in a fantastic performance. Maybe he's the guy to take on Conor McGregor next in, I guess, what would be a quadrilogy, I think, at that point, because they have fought each other a couple of times before, and in those fights, of course, Conor McGregor did lose to Poirier twice. The first time he did get KO'd. The most recent time did happen due to him getting injured with that unfortunate sort of foot snap. But now he's got that titanium shin bone that he keeps talking about. Is Chandler actually going to fight McGregor next? Because it does feel like it's just a big waste of time. Chandler's not young, dude. I mean, when this fight was booked to be on in June, Chandler was going to be 38 years old. He's 37 years old right now. Didn't fight in the calendar year of 2023. His last win was over Tony Ferguson, which has aged really badly. His win over Dan Hooker in 2021 has aged pretty well. But if you look at his UFC career in general, in hindsight, I mean, is this the legacy that he really wants to leave behind? A win over Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson was all he was able to do. He couldn't get past Oliveira, he couldn't get past Gaethje, he couldn't get past Poirier, because as good as his legacy was in Bellator, a multiple-time champion, multiple great wins over great fighters like Benson Henderson most recently, Goiti Yamauchi, who I think is really good, Patricky Pitbull he beat as well, and then of course I think he had a trilogy with, maybe it was a trilogy with Eddie Alvarez, I thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just Benson Henderson. Patricio Pitbull. The point is, people aren't going to remember Michael Chandler for his Bellator run. They're going to remember him for his UFC run. And the Conor McGregor fight would actually be kind of perfect to cap off his career and cap off his legacy. But there's a real chance it doesn't happen. I've said in the past, there's bigger names out there that Conor McGregor could be looking at. He could be looking at Nate Diaz in a trilogy. He could be looking at Justin Gaethje for that BMF belt. He could be looking at Charles Oliveira, who's one of the most popular fighters in the world right now. And also McGregor might not even be looking at 155. He might be looking at 170. He might be looking at someone like Leon Edwards, just to bring up kind of an example. He might even be looking at 185, maybe liking his chances against, I don't know, Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, someone like that. He might not even be looking at 155, and more importantly, he might not even be looking at Chandler. I know they did the Ultimate Fighter season together. It just doesn't seem likely, man. And a lot of people online are talking about this right now. Conor McGregor doesn't seem like he's in training camp for anything. He was recently watching the UFC, I believe, at his pub, was obviously drinking there, so he's not in camp, he's not training, he's not focused in. Michael Chandler has spent the last year and a bit literally just probably in the gym all the time, waiting for this fight that's never going to happen. A shame, a real shame. So, yeah, let me know what you think about that one in the comments below. Do you think Conor McGregor is wasting his time? So not McGregor, do you think Chandler's wasting his time? Because at the end of the day, out of these two, McGregor can afford to never fight again for the rest of his life. In fact, his children could probably never work a job, and their children could probably never work a job because of the amount of money that he's made in his career. I don't know if you can say the same against Michael Chandler. Sure, he's probably got a lot of money. Sure, he probably made a lot of money off Tough, Bellator, UFC, so-and-so sponsors and all that. What I don't think Michael Chandler can just kind of sit without money for forever like McGregor can. You know what I mean? That's another thing that I want to kind of bring up. But I'm sure Chandler's well off. I'm sure he's financially smart and stable. But yeah, I feel like eventually Chandler's gonna have to say, hey, maybe I will just get a rematch with Dan Hooker or something like that, and I'm not gonna fight McGregor. Or hey, Renato Moicano is a pretty big name. I might just take my chances against him. I don't know, something like that. Or maybe Chandler just wants to fight Poirier again. I just don't know what's going on with Chandler, man. Like, this is the legacy he's going to leave behind if he retires without fighting McGregor. A win over Dan Hooker. I love Dan Hooker. But he's not the best fighter in the world. And then a win over Tony Ferguson, man. And Tony Ferguson looked good in that fight as well. Like, it's just... He's not going to leave behind an everlasting UFC legacy if he can't get the McGregor fight. I think he's wasting his time. I think there's other options for him potentially. There's more options for McGregor, as I had mentioned before. Do you think he's wasting his time? I think he is, honestly. If McGregor does fight him, then I will happily swallow my words. I will happily say I'm wrong. But at the moment, it just doesn't really seem that likely that McGregor's even going to come back, let alone be against Michael Chandler. There's probably other fighters he's looking at over Chandler. And honestly, just to spite Michael Chandler, I could really see McGregor just fighting someone else for that reason. So, leave me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.